Coldy and Godric Productions proudly presents to you The Sleeping Beauty. Chapter 1. The Thin Clergyman. Sir Handel Brown sat in his office at Craven's Gate Station, smoke surrounding him due to the cigar sticking out of his mouth. The office was quite small, with a small desk and 3 small chairs surrounding it. On the desk lay the files of 2 of his engines. Now, Sir Handel usually didn't need to pull out the files of any of his engines, but today he had a special visitor coming to see him, someone who Sir Handel wasn't really fond of. "Stupid Englishman," he thought to himself. "My railway was supposed to be a little line that could be a safe haven for locals to visit, yet he had to stick his nose in here and now we're full of visitors." Obviously, he didn't see the uprising tourism of his little line as a positive thing. Just then, he heard a knock at the door. "Come in," said Sir Handel, with a hint of passiveness in his voice. The person on the other side did, and there, standing in Sir Handel's office, was his visitor. The visitor was a tall man in his late 50s. He was tall and quite thin. The lines on his face clearly showed, yet his face still seemed to be quite lively despite his age. He was dressed in a nice black suit. The suit itself was old, just like the man wearing it, though it was nice and elegant. Wilbert Ver Audrey sat down onto the chair facing Sir Handel's and pulled out something from the bag he was carrying, an old photograph, possibly dating back 50 or so years. On the photograph stood a young boy, smiling, looking happier than ever, and behind the boy was a steam locomotive. Not a big steam locomotive, it was a narrow-gauge engine, but it was a tender engine nonetheless. "The boy in the picture is me," said the Reverend. "I was very young when it was taken, back during my family's first visit to the island. I have little to no memories about the visit, but I recently found it and took up an interest towards it." Sir Handel Brown examined the picture, then looked back at the Reverend with a puzzled look on his face. "Why did you bring this here?" he asked. "Well," said Wilbert Audrey, "do you know what this is?" "An engine, obviously." "I know that," said the Reverend, trying to keep calm, all the while feeling a little offended. "I was inquiring on which engine this is." "I don't know," Sir Handel said bluntly. "I have never seen it in my life. Seems to be one of the old Mitsodor engines from the lettering on its tender." And indeed, on the engine's tender sat the letters MS, and clearly some more writing on its saddle tank. Those, however, were unclear. "And," said Sir Handel, "I think this also ties in with your prior request for a search for the files in front of me. Say, you're writing another book?" "Why, yes," said the thin clergyman, "and I'm thinking that this will be the last one. 25 is a milestone in writing children's books. However, with the way the publishers are pressuring me, it might not be the case." He took a short pause before continuing. "As for the files, I believe these 2 engines of yours used to work on the Mitsodor Railway." "Indeed," said Sir Handel Brown. "Peter Sam and Sir Handel were called Stewart and Falcon back then. When the Mitsodor closed, they were sold to the Peel Godred Aluminum Company to help with their expansion. Then they came here. I put them on standby duties when I heard you were coming, and they're currently both in the sheds if you want to talk to them." "Well then, let's get to it," replied the Reverend, and the 2 men stood up and left the office, Sir Handel Brown throwing away his cigar as they did. Sir Handel and Peter Sam were sitting in the yards of the wharf, bathing their coats of paint in the afternoon sunlight. However, they were both confused. "I wonder why the owner put us on standby duties," said Peter Sam. "Now poor Rusty and Glennock have to do our work." "Just be happy you don't have to do those slate tricks for once," said Sir Handel. "Besides, Glennock needs to learn how to manage them besides maintenance work." Just then, the owner and Reverend Wilbert Audrey walked into the yards. "Good afternoon, Mr. Audrey," greeted the engines. "What brings you here this time round?" "Well," said the thin clergyman, "I have been doing some clearing out of my attic last month, and came across a bunch of old photographs by my father during one of many visits to the island when I was really young. One of them caught my eye, and he lifted the photograph up in his hands, showing it to the 2 engines. Sir Handel and Peter Sam's jaws dropped, as if an old memory had come back to them. Sir Handel," stammered Peter Sam. "Is that—" "Grandpa?" asked Sir Handel. Yes, it is.
Obey or be gone.
So, Master Evan, can you tell us about him?